fellow human beings, my gorgeous, good looking human beings. If you are watching, make sure you comment or share or like or give some kind of reaction on there so I know that you have a pulse and that you're alive. If you've never watched before, please make sure you say hi in the comments and generally do all the cool social media stuff you're supposed to do, like, subscribe, follow. My name is Patrick Allman. I'm live from the Stop Doing Nothing studios here in Oklahoma City, which, yes, 100%. I'm not in the office today, so it's 100% in the extra bedroom office. That's the Stop Doing Nothing world headquarters. My name is Patrick Allman, and I run a marketing agency here in Oklahoma City, but I'm also a guy that's crazy obsessed with self-improvement and fitness, and today's gym day, and I've had my fiber, and I've showered, and I've shaved, and I've done push-ups, and I've done calf raises, and I am raring to go, and hopefully you are too. Like I said, if you haven't ever done so, please make sure you comment and let me know where you are watching from. If you are watching on Facebook, I would encourage you to share it if you would. And if you are a big YouTube fan, help me over on YouTube, growing the subscribers over there. Hop over to YouTube. The show is live in multiple places. It's even live in a high-level CRM community too, which is pretty cool. Today, we are going to be talking about things in your business that you should be looking at that every year, every X number of time period, and the end of year is a good time to do this. I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions. No, new year, new me, whatever. I was the same person on January 31st, that I was on December 31st, that I was on January 1st. Nothing magically changed. So I'm not a big fan of like New Year's resolutions. However, what I am a fan of is reviewing what my business and I both need on a regular basis. And that's what I've been doing this past week, probably for a couple of weeks. Is basically I've been looking at how I operated my business last year, what worked, what didn't work, and what I need to change. And I've been doing that in several areas. We'll get into a little bit, but for example, this morning I was up at 5 o'clock this morning looking at project management software. Again, we use ClickUp. We're a huge ClickUp shop. I've advocated ClickUp for a couple of years now, and we do so much inside of it. But recently I've been looking at ClickUp again, and it's like ClickUp does everything, but nothing great. Now, I don't ever say that to diss or put down ClickUp. I love the tool. I love the fact that there's just so many cool business features in there. But for example, I was looking at projects, different projects, and one of the things I have trouble seeing sometimes is the financials of a project, or how much on time or how far behind a project is, or client communication. Okay. Client communication is just huge when it comes to projects. There are plenty of times I fall down on that. I'm looking for ways to improve that, obviously in my personal life and my processes, but also in the software that we use. And I've noticed recently that, and we can get into it for a little bit because this is one of the main things I'm reviewing, but ClickUp doesn't let me know whether or not a project was profitable easily. Okay, that's something I have to manually get numbers for when it comes to, how much did a resource cost me, or how much did we spend on this, or how much of my time, which is the most expensive time in the company, how much time did I spend on that to know whether or not something was truly profitable. One of the things you need to know, and it's kind of a maturity thing, and hopefully I can encourage you to learn a little bit faster, is that oftentimes in business we look at whether or not something is profitable or not based on income and expense and profit or not. But oftentimes in that expense side, we don't factor in our own time. So for example, I have different contract resources I use, W2 and 1099, and oftentimes when I'm looking at profit, I forget to factor in my own time. And I have to start doing that. So while ClickUp has been working great for us, ClickUp doesn't let me see any financials on a or hourly stuff on a project at all. Like how many hours were spent, how much of those hours cost me, and was this project profitable or not? So that's something I've been really digging into. And I was up at 5 o'clock this morning looking at a couple of different packages. Teamwork is one, and Productive.io was another one that not only are really focused on project management, which ClickUp is not. ClickUp is a great general kind of task list manager, but it's not good on, actual project. This is the project start, this is the project end, These are the milestones. This is the budget. Are we ahead? Are we behind? Stuff like that. It's not easy to see that. So I've been reviewing, whether or not we should be even using ClickUp, or should we be using all of it, using part of something else. So we're starting a trial of Teamwork, a trial of Productive.io. Excuse me. Got the coffee burpees this morning. I hate burpees. I love coffee, but the two together, we do not want the two together. So we've been looking at, whether or not this is a good package for us to use going forward. And I've got a list here, which I want to run through with you for you to kind of do like an end of year checklist. And what I'm talking about here are things that specifically we're doing, or things that I know we need to do. So I have like a list in front of me of things I think you should look at. One of them is going to be like your stack. Okay, that's going to be a big one. As a general phrase, your stack of software. As you know, we are a high-level certified admin shop. We live and breathe high-level CRM for marketing automation and lead generation and AI and everything else. And that's going to stay in my stack. That's not going to go anyplace anytime soon. But but I'm looking at kind of the different tools that we use with high level, and making sure those are also the best of breed tools. Financial software, for example. Last year we transitioned from using QuickBooks to Xero, Xero, because QuickBooks just sucks. I'm sorry, I will say it 10 times over. Especially QuickBooks Online. I used to be a big QuickBooks fan back in the day of QuickBooks Desktop, but QuickBooks Online has blown from day one. I don't know if it's gotten any better recently, but every time I've used it, I've wanted to pull my hair out. And if you know where my hair is, up here, that's a very hard thing to do. Maybe that's the reason why I went bald, is I was starting to, use QuickBooks Online too much. But I'm not bald. I shave it on purpose. Shave it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But financial software is one of those things that we're looking at. Project management software is always a good end of year one. Let me see. I've got some, and I'm going to call those hard things you should analyze versus soft things. Hard skills versus soft skills, hard topics to analyze versus soft topics to analyze. Um, you know, as I look at my list here, revenue versus projections. That's something I have to admit I haven't analyzed yet, but did I hit did I hit what I wanted to for an annual goal versus my monthly goals? I need to go back and look at that to be sure. And same things with stuff like gross profitability and net profitability. And that's what got me into this whole thing with analyzing our project management software is, are we profitable? Now, I know as a company we are profitable. That's not a problem. But I wanted more detail. I wanted to know, are we profitable by the person? Are we profitable by the project? How close are we coming over our particular budget sometimes in the projects? And yes, probably things I should have been doing all along, but I'm just getting into them more and more now. Um, and I've got some other things here on the list. KPIs. Oh, KPIs and OKRs. Specifically KPIs, and goodness gracious, I'm just looking through this list here because I was working with AI, making up a list of things I need to review and combining that with my list. But KPIs is a big one. And the reason I say that's a big one is because that's something that I obsess over. I am a big fan of basically pushing myself away from a computer, going to a coffee shop on occasion or someplace quiet and relaxing, taking my beautiful, lovely iPad here and just looking at numbers, and how did we get to certain numbers? How did we get to profitability on a certain project or venture or something like that? And I do that a lot on my iPad. But my iPad needs to have the tools on it for me to be able to do that. So I've been looking at the apps I use to determine profitability. There's one I love a while back that I installed called Numerics on my iPad. And Numerics is a really good tool for you to be able to pull up like KPIs and numbers and see them at a glance. It's almost like, let me see what's the best way to put this. Um, it's almost like I want to be able to go to a dashboard on my iPad and instantly see numbers. I want to be able to see numbers. Number, and glance in 10, 15 seconds, be able to tell the health of something, the health of the financials, the health of the deposits, the health of a particular project. All those things I want to be able to see at a glance. Those are my KPIs. but oftentimes KPIs, we have so much data in this world that KPIs are hard to view. Meaning, if you're looking at like MRR, well, that data is over in what? That data is over in Stripe or Authorize.net or whatever your merchant account is of choice. Sometimes you have to go over there to pull it in. If you're lucky, you can use a tool like Numerics or like ChartMogul to easily see your MRR and whether or not you're hitting your numbers there. Some other things I have on my dashboard here on my iPad are number of YouTube subscribers. Why does that matter? Because that's my reach. YouTube subscribers, social media subscribers, those are my reach. Is that going up? Is that going down? And let me see what else. I had something else. Oh, I've got ClickUp data here. I think I've got ClickUp data here that shows me how many tasks are behind in ClickUp. My tasks and other people's tasks. But that's what I want. That's what I'm aiming for when it comes to how I run my business is really quick visibility every morning, every week. I joke with some friends that I want to be able to use an iPad to run my business because that's what I want to take out to the beach with me. And I'd be lying if that wasn't actually a goal. But yeah, that's the goal is I want to be able to sit on a beach or on a cruise ship or just someplace that's not a business environment and pull up an iPad or a phone while I'm having a cup of coffee or, some whiskey or some bourbon or whatever, and glance at numbers and say, oh, this is good. Oh, this is bad in a heartbeat. Believe it or not, that's hard to do. That really is hard to do because your metrics are spread out so many places. So if this is something that you want to do also, like I said, check out a tool called Numerics. Numerics, like a little miniature dashboard that you can run on your iPad or your iPhone, and you just attach it. It talks to all kinds of services, Stripes, different project management software, different your email, everything else, and just gives you some simple numbers to let you know how you're doing. I also noticed on my iPad, I was remembering now as I was kind of revisiting what I was doing in December, because this whole process of starting an end of year business review, this actually started in December. And so in December, one of the things I did is I decided that I wanted to stay in touch with people better and not relying on my memory. I decided this one was a decision a while back, probably 5 or 10 years ago, that I don't trust my memory. Not that I'm going senile, not that anything's going wrong, but I have a lot going on. And just trying to keep all that stuff floating here in the front of your brain all the time never ever works. And so my goal is to try to keep nothing in the forefront of my brain here except for what I'm immediately working on, and then use software and other tools to kind of keep me on track with that stuff. So another tool I'm just looking here on my iPad I started playing with last month is a tool called Dex, DEX, which is a contact management tool, but it's also that when I say by contact management is it helps me stay in touch with people. If you look at all the connections we have between LinkedIn and Facebook and all the social media platforms and the contacts on your phone, I mean, I don't know about you, I could very easily pull up my phone. I've probably got, hundreds of contacts in my phone, old friends, new friends, leads, business associates, partners, things like that. But I would like to make sure I stay in touch with certain key people. And so what Dex does, DEX, is Dex, number one, allows you to pull in people and start categorizing them, which is really important. But also you can set up certain people to as far as how often you want to stay in touch with them. And I'll give you an example here. As I have this here on my iPad. Let me see. This is the clock one. Is this no reminders completed? Okay, so let's see updates. Shirley Davis. So the feature here that I really like is okay, there it is, keep in touch. So what you can do is you can go to you can basically take different people and categorize them as to how much you want to keep in touch with them. And again, this tool is called Dex, DEX. I think it stands for, It's a fancy abbreviation for Rolodex, right? And so what I can do in here, and I've started doing this as I'm looking in here, is I am I am taking people and categorizing them and saying I want to keep in touch with them weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, every 6 months, every year. And so then what I constantly have a list here of people that I need to keep in touch with. And I have to admit that let me see here. As I'm looking at this here, let me see. So, and one of the things I like about this is this pulls in your communications from different channels, so it knows whether or not you're staying in touch with people. So, I can. There's a lady here I work with, Carrie Taft, and the whole Dex infrastructure looks at your text messages. Actually think it's running on my Mac here. Is that right? Do I have Dex running on my Mac? Yeah, it runs on your Mac. It runs on your browser, and it's basically looking at all these relationships and helping you decide that, oh, you haven't reached out to this person in a while. Maybe it's something you ought to consider doing. And so that was a high priority for me in December, and I've already started doing that. I've got Dex. You have to have Dex running on your Mac desktop so it can sync up your text messages, but I've got it on my iPad. I've got it on my phone. And in front of me right now, I have something beautiful. It's basically saying, Patrick, these are the people that you need to reach out to in the next X number of days. I've got a couple of people I've got to reach out to by January 14th because I haven't talked to them in a while. And then I've got some January 21st. And then as I go down into the later part of the month and 3 months and 1 year, oh my goodness, yes, I've started categorizing people that just lets me know how often I want to keep in touch with them. And you may think, well, Patrick, why can't you just do that by memory? I mean, that's easy. Why can't you just remember to reach out to your friends? Yeah, it is easy if you had nothing else going on in your brain. And like I said earlier, I have so many things going on in my brain that I don't want to try to remember to do something. This is exactly why we have technology. I mean, I can go on a soapbox here for a little while. This is exactly why we have technology, is as second brains to help us do things. That's the entire reason we have a monitor and an iPad and a phone and this and that, and it's to help us relieve the stress on our brain and do things for us. Why am I going to try and remember, for example, that there's a let's see, I can pick any kind of random friend here. I'll pick here's my buddy Phil Gerbishak, who's in on the East Coast. I know that I need to stay in touch with Phil Gerbishak. I know I can think about it right now while I'm talking to you on a live stream. But in 5 minutes, I'll see a shiny object. In 5 minutes, somebody else on my list may call me and I'll forget about Phil in the back of my head or in the foreground, if you will. And I just don't want to forget about doing things like that. So to me, at the end of the year, when I started doing this recap of the tools I should be using and the way I should be managing my time and my contacts, staying in touch with people was a big one. And so I started researching different tools that you'd think that by default, you would use the contact manager on your phone here, but the contact manager on the Apple phone is just very basic. It doesn't do stuff like remind you to stay in touch with certain people. Now, what's cool about Dex is not only does Dex do that, but Dex will import that from my phone. Dex will import the phone call. I know it imports text messages. I'm not sure if it imports phone calls or not, but either way, I decided that this is important. I want to put some money on this. So Dex, I think, is $20 a month. And again, the website, I don't know what the website is, but the tool is called Dex, short for Rolodex. Let's kind of go back here to my list of other things that I want to make sure you look at before, as you're doing kind of an end of year recap. We talked about KPIs. Here's another one: customer retention and churn and NPS. Those are things that I don't spend enough time on. I really know I don't spend enough time on customer retention and churn and NPS. Really quickly, for those of you that don't know, or my non-business people who don't know what those are, churn is basically a function of how often are you losing and getting customers. Churn, and like a butter churn, things swirling around, customers coming in, customers going out, customers going in, customers going out. That's what churn is. And if you run an MRR business, which we do consulting, but we also have a line of income which is MRR related. MRR being monthly recurring revenue is what I believe MRR stands for. It's just basically knowing that we can charge somebody $1,000 a month, and that $1,000 is going to hit every single month. We have several clients like that on retainer that are paying us to handle their marketing and to make their life easier. So, I got to pay attention to my MRR and my churn rate. How fast are people coming in versus how fast people are going out? And people don't always leave because they're unhappy. Sometimes people leave because they are choosing to take things internally, or they're no longer doing a particular line of business. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways there that that you can have churn. Another one is NPS, which I know a lot of people don't pay attention to. NPS is Net Promoter Score, and it's really simple, but it's really important. NPS is a scale that someone came up with a while back. A scale of 1 to 10 is how likely is someone to recommend your business. Promoter, that's what the P stands for in that scenario. Promoter, Net Promoter Score. How likely is somebody to recommend your business? If you get, 8, 9s, and 10s, then it's very likely someone's going to recommend your business. If you're getting, what would that be? I said 8, 9s, 10s, so that'd be 7, 6, 5. Probably 7, 6, 5. There's some work to be done, but you're doing okay. And then, 4 on down is very bad. If people, and this, you kind of think this is like reviews, but reviews are more, how did I do for a given function or a given project? NPS is, how likely is someone to recommend me? Which is really important. In business, we should always be looking for referrals, affiliate referrals, partner referrals, things like that. We should always be looking for something like that. And that's what NPS determines. I know I'm not doing a good job of measuring NPS, Net Promoter Score. Again, it's really simple. It would not be hard at all for me to come up with a form in high level to basically say, what's your name? What's your email address? How likely are you to recommend us on a scale of 1 to 10? And I need to start paying attention to that. I need to start coming up with that form. Again, something very simple, very fast, very easy to do inside of high level. I just have to make time to do it. Um, Let me see what else we're looking at here. So underneath, the competitive landscape is always a good one. Tech stack and security. I'm never concerned about security so much, but tech stack is another one. Am I using the right tech stack? And that kind of gets back to what I was talking about in the very beginning of the stream. Is I realized that my tech stack is not serving me in some places. It's not serving our clients when it comes to allowing them to easily communicate with us, and it's not serving me as the business owner to be able to see profit margins per project. That's just something I've really obsessed over recently. Is I want to see for any given project how profitable that project is, and if it's extremely profitable, if it's so much higher than what I was shooting for, then then maybe I misjudged something. Maybe I overestimated. If it's a lot lower, or obviously if we're taking a loss at it, then it's something else that I made a mistake on. But I'm not looking at those numbers enough, which is why I'm looking at these other tools to help me evaluate whether or not projects are profitable or not. Interesting. So I've got, um, and then after that, these are kind of divided up into, what do I have? These are divided up into 5 or 6 categories. Well, no, more like 3 categories here. As I get further down this list of things I want you to consider here, let's see, what do we have? Employee performance and growth, always good. And my project manager, Crystal, and I, we work on that a lot. And so I'm having a pretty good handle on that. Team sentiment, interesting. This is one I only heard of recently. It's called ENPS. Using an anonymous survey to gauge the vibe. Burnout is a major risk at year end. Look for signs of disengagement or cultural misalignment. Interesting. Interesting. ENPS. I know I'm not measuring that. I could do better there. Talent needs for 2026. Based on your growth goals, who do you need to hire in Q1 or Q2? That's something else that Patrick needs to work on. And as we get kind of further down the list, we've got stuff like insurance and legal coverage. I think I'm in pretty good shape there. Disaster recovery plans. I've often thought about that one. In a former life, I was the disaster recovery manager for the Hertz car rental company here in Oklahoma City. That's, a few decades ago. That's where I cut my IT chops in the world. Is Hertz. It's probably and we're talking, yeah, the yellow and black company. I was going to say they're a couple of miles down the street, but I realized their headquarters just moved to the other side of Oklahoma City. But yeah, when I first got out of the Air Force in 86, let's see, 90, I went to Hertz for 8 years. And one of my roles was disaster recovery manager, disaster recovery coordinator. We would actually, when you think of disaster recovery at the corporate level, it's a big deal. We had to play pretend every year and assume that we lost all the people and the entire data center, and we had to get the Hertz company up and running. Goodness gracious, I just realized my camera is all hokey for you. Let's fix this real quick. There we go. I think moving around, I've got a new camera, and I think moving my hands around screws up the focus and the depth and the zoom. But in the corporate world, when we did disaster recovery, it was a big deal. We would travel for like 3 or 4 days every year up to the New York area and basically rebuild Hertz in the tech part of Hertz in like 48 hours. Yeah, part of it had to be up in 24 hours. Another part had to be up in 48 hours. So we would basically just rebuild the tech infrastructure of the company using backups. So I got really good at disaster recovery, and that's something that's always on my mind. Now, I don't work in that environment anymore, but these days, when I think about disaster recovery, it got a lot easier the more web centric we got. Now, I live and die by a couple of tools. Number one, my Mac, which I'm streaming from, but I've already got it in my head that if for some reason this Mac fell out of my car and cracked in half or whatever, I know exactly what I would do to get up and running really fast. First of all, on my Mac, I make sure I keep everything in the cloud. Okay, so I know that as soon as I put an image or a download or a zip file or I run a report, it sits in iCloud, so I know I can get to it from a web browser. So as long as you are syncing things to the cloud, you're kind of in disaster recovery mode. But I also know that if I needed a new machine, I know there's two things I could do. I could run to the Apple Store, connect my iCloud account, and be back up and running pretty fast. Or if I wanted to go the cheap route, I could run to the closest super Walmart, um, buy not a Chromebook. I could buy a Chromebook, sign into my Apple accounts, and get things up and going as soon as possible. Okay, and I would have to do that within hours. So my disaster recovery for the kind of business I am right now is a lot easier. And if you haven't ever thought about that, think about that, please. Think about if you lost your phone or your iPad or your MacBook or your Dell machine or whatever it is. Think about what would happen if this thing just stopped working. What would happen if you were a small business owner and you went to turn on your primary piece of technology, maybe it's your webcam or your teleprompter or your giant monitor or your actual machine? What would happen if you woke up tomorrow and this didn't work? What would you do and how quickly could you do it? I spent some time thinking about that. I know exactly how long and how far away the closest Walmart is. I know exactly where the Chromebooks are. I know pretty close to what the prices are, how quickly I could get up and get one and get back to a Starbucks or a home office and be back in business. Or the extreme route is I know, exactly how to get to the local Apple store, what machine I would probably buy really quick and, just step out in the lobby of the mall. Our Apple store is in a mall here and be back up and running. So think about that. Think about your key files or your key technology and what you have to do to maintain continuity if you have issues. These days, a lot of us live in Dropbox or Google Drive or iCloud, and those three things have saved so many butts. Okay, yeah, a lot of my spreadsheets are Google Sheets. So disaster recovery is as long as Google stays in business, I have access to my sheets and I can go to them from any web browser in the world. But do me a favor, spend some time on some of these topics again. And if you're just coming into the end of the video, I would encourage you to go back to the beginning and look. But basically, this show was all about kind of what you should be looking at for your business with a heavy emphasis on tech in 2026 going forward. What should you be doing better? What data are you not getting that you need to help you make decisions? And that to me was a major one, which is why I'm looking at different project management tools now. Is again, this whole show came from obviously an end of year recap, but also me just realizing that I need to look at all of my tools in depth to make sure I can put in the data I need, to make sure it's serving my customers with communication wise, and to make sure I can see the financials of things like my projects, to make sure my projects are profitable. And if you're doing all this stuff already, kudos. You are a better woman or man than I am. Actually, any woman on the planet is going to be a better woman than I am. I am a horrible, horrible woman. I make a very poor excuse for a woman. But if you want this list I put together here, please, either text me, the number floats around at the bottom of the screen, or visit the website and fill out the contact form, or just DM me on social media, and I'll put together kind of the list I'm going through, my checklist of what I am reviewing this year to see whether or not, I need to make some improvements. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. If it has, please make sure you DM me and or leave a comment, or also let me know in the comments things that I should be looking at that I forgot to mention. I'm not infallible. I forget to mention things all the time. So if you've got anything there that you want us to look at, or do you think I should be looking at, please let me know. Otherwise, you have a great Wednesday, January 7th. I will be getting this out on YouTubes and the Facebooks of the world. And now it's time to hop back into tool analysis and keeping clients happy. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Let's do this.